coming, and thank you especially to the volunteers, board members, and administrators at Clarion West. It's a thankless job, and it's a hard run, and they do hard and good work in the service of furthering the field, and it's good work, it's important work. I'm a Clarion grad. It made me the writer I are today. And thank you all for coming. Thank you especially to the booksellers outside. I'm a recovering bookseller, working events like this. Also a labor of love. And an unsolicited plug, I stopped on the way over here with Ramez Nam at the University Bookstore and had absolutely the best cup of bookstore coffee I've ever drunk. They've started bringing sunshine in. I speak as a major coffee snob. I'm going to read to you tonight from a novel called Utopia. It's something that clocks in about 225,000 words in the first draft and is now in the kind of 170,000, 180,000 words in what is approaching a final draft and likely to be a tour book in 2016, along with a picture book for small children that will be 24 pages and about 100 words. It's going to be a fun tour. So, without further ado, I'm going to read you sort of Utopia. Utopia has a dedication. For Eric Stewart and Aaron Swartz, First Days, Better Nations, we fight on. Chapter 1, Communist Party, Part 1. Hubert, Vernon, Rudolph, Clayton, Irving, Wilson, Alva, Anton, Jeff, Harley, Timothy, Curtis, Cleveland, Cecil, Ollie, Edmund, Eli, Wiley, Marvin, Ellis, Nicholas, Esperanza was too old to be a Communist Party. At 27, he had 7 years on the next oldest partier. He felt the demographic void. He wanted to hide behind one of the enormous filthy machines that dotted the floor of the derelict factory. Anything to escape the frank, flat looks from the beautiful children of every shade and size who couldn't understand why an old man was creepering around. Let's go, he said to Seth, who dragged him to the party. Seth was terrified of aging out of the beautiful children demographic and entering the world of non-work. He had an instinct for finding the most outre, cutting-edge, transgressive goings-on among the children who had been receding in their rearview mirrors. Hubert, etc., Espinoza, only hung out with Seth, because part of Seth's thing about not letting go of his childhood was also not letting go of childhood friends. He was insistent on the subject, and Hubert, etc., was a pushover. This is about to get real, Seth said. Why don't you get us beers? This was exactly what Hubert, etc., didn't want to do. The beer was where the most insouciant adolescents congregated, merry and weird as tropical fishes, each more elfin and tragic than the last. Hubert, etc., remembered that age, the certainty that the world was so broken that only an idiot would deign to acknowledge its inevitability. Hubert, etc., often confronted his reflection in the bathroom screen, stared into his eyes in their nest of bruising bags, and remembered being someone who spent every minute denying the world's legitimacy. And now he was enmeshed in it. Hubert, etc., could not self-delude the knowledge away. Anyone under 20 would spot that in a second. Go on, man, come on, I got you into this party. Least you can do. Hubert, etc., didn't say any obvious things about not wanting to come to the party in the first place and not wanting beer in the second place. There were lots of pointless places an argument with Seth could go. He had his Peter Pan face on, prepared to be ha-ha, only serious until you wore down, and Hubert, etc., started the night worn. I don't have any money, Hubert, etc., said. Seth gave him a look. Oh yeah, Hubert, etc., said. Communist Party. Seth passed him 2 red party cups, their color surely no accident. As Hubert, etc., drew up to the taps, spooged onto a vertical piece of structural steel that shot up the floor and up to the rafters, skinned with checkered yellow barcodes and smudges of entropy and dancing lights in the DJ, and tried to figure out which of the beautiful children was bartender, factum, factotum, or commissar. No one moved to help him or block him as he edged closer, though 3 of the children stopped to watch with intense expressions. All 3 wore Marx glasses with huge, bushy beards hanging, like in the vocoder videos, full of surreal menace. These ones were dyed bright colors, and one had something in it, memory wire, that made it crawl like tentacles. Hubert, etc., clumsily filled a cup, and the girl held it while he filled the other. The beer was incandescent or bioluminescent, and Hubert, etc., worried what might be in the transgenic Jesus microbes that could turn water into beer, but the girl was looking at him from behind those glasses, her eyes unreadable in the flickering dance lights. He drank. Not bad. He burped again. Fizzy, though. Because it's fast acting. It was ditch water an hour ago. We sipped it, brought it up to room temp, dumped in the culture. It's live, too. Add some precursor, it'll come back. Survives in your urine. Just save some if you want to make some more. Communist beer, Hubert, etc. said. The best bon mot he could scrounge. He was better when he had time to think. Nazdrovya, she clicked her cup against his and drained it, loosing a bone-rattling belch when she finished. She gave her chest a thump and stared at smaller gurts, refilled her glass. If it comes out in pee, Hubert, etc. said, what happens when someone adds the precursor to the sewers? Does it all turn to beer? She gave him a look of adolescent scorn. That would be stupid. Once it's diluted, it can't metabolize precursor. Flush, and it's just pee. The critters die in an hour or so a latrine won't turn into a reservoir of long-lived existential threats to the water supply. It's just beer, or fizzy beer. Hubert, etc. sipped. It was really good. It didn't taste like piss at all. All beer is rented, right? He said. Most beer is rented. This is free. You know, free as in free beer. She drank half the cup, spilling it into her beer. It beaded on the crinkly refugee stuff. You don't come to a lot of communist parties. Hubert, etc. shrugged. I don't, he said. I'm old and boring. 8 years ago, we weren't doing this. What were you doing, Gramps? Not in a mean way, but her two friends, a girl the same shade as Seth and a guy with beautiful cat eyes, sniggered. Hoping to get jobs on the Zeppelins, Seth said, slinging an arm around Hubert, etc.'s neck. I'm Seth, by the way. This is Hubert, etc. Etc., the girl said. Just a little smile. Hubert, etc. liked her. He thought she was probably secretly nice, probably didn't think he was a dork just because he was a few years older and hadn't heard of her favorite kind of synthetic beer. He recognized that this belief was driven by a theory of humanity, that most people were good, but also by a horrible, oppressive loneliness and a non-specific horniness. Hubert, etc. was bright, which wasn't always easy, and had a moderate handle on his psyche that made it hard to bullshit himself. Tell her, dude, Seth said. Come on, it's a great story. It's not a great story, Hubert, etc. said. My parents gave me a lot of little names is all. How many is a lot? 20, he said. The top 20 names from the 1890 census. That's only 19, she said quickly, and one first name. Seth laughed like it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. Even Hubert, etc. smiled. Most people don't get that. Technically, I have 19 middle names and one first name. Why did your parents give you 19 middle names and one first name? She said. And are you sure it's 19 middle names? Maybe you have 10 first names and 10 middle names. I think it's hard to claim to have more than one first name, because first has a specificity that middle lacks. Notwithstanding Mary Ann's and Jean Marc's and such, which are hyphenated by convention. Fair point, she said. Though, come on, if Mary Ann is a first name, why couldn't Mary Ann, Tanya, Jessie, Banana Pants, Monkey Vomit, etc.? My parents would agree. They were making a statement about names after Anonymous brought in its real names policy. They both were really active, worked to make it a political party, so they were really fucked off. Thought it was obvious that if you were anonymous, you couldn't have a real names policy. They decided to give their kid a unique name that never fit into any database, which would give them the right to legally use a whole bunch of subnames. By the time I got all this, I was used to Hubert, so I stuck to it. Seth took Hubert's cup, swilled from it, burped. I've always called you Hubert, etc., though. It's cool and it's easier to say. I don't mind. Do it, okay, though? What? Hubert, etc. knew the answer. The names. You've got to hear this. You don't have to, she said. I do, probably, or you'll wonder. He made his peace with it. It was part of growing up. Hubert, Vernon, Rudolph Clayton, Irving, Wilson, Alva, Anton, Jeff, Harley, Timothy, Curtis, Cecil, Cleveland, Ollie, Edmund, Eli, Wiley, Marvin, Alice, Nicholas, Espinoza. She cocked her head. Needs more banana pants. Bet you got teas like hell in school though, right? Seth said. This pissed Hubert, etc. off. It was stupid, and it was a recurring stupidity. Come on, really? You think that names are what get kids teased? The causal arrow points the other way. If the kids are making fun of your name, it's because you're unpopular. You're not unpopular because of your name. If the coolest kid in school was called Harry Balls, they'd call him Harold. If the school goat was called Lisa Brown, they'd call her Shit Stain. He nearly said, seriously, don't be an asshole, but didn't. He was invested in being an adult. Seth paid no attention to the possibility that he was being an asshole. What's your name? Seth said to the girl. Lisa Brown, she said. Hubert and Seth snickered. Seriously? No. He waited to see if she'd offer her name and then shrugged. I'm Seth. He went to her friends who'd inch closer. One of them did a fancy handshake, which he faked with totally unself-conscious enthusiasm that Hubert, etc., envied and was embarrassed by. The dance music got louder. Seth refilled Hubert, etc.'s cup and took it to the dance floor. Hubert was the only one without a cup. The girl refilled hers and passed it. Good stuff, she shouted, her breath tickling his cheek. The music was really loud, an automated mix tied into DJ stuff that used LiDAR and heat mapping to characterize crowd responses to musical mixes and optimize them to get everyone on the floor. They had it back when Hubert, etc. was young enough to go clubbing, called it Rule 34 for all the different mixes, but it had been cheesy then. Now it was the business. Kind of hoppy though. Not the taste, the enzymes. Stuff in it helps you break it down, stops it from turning into formaldehyde in your blood. Good for reducing hangovers. It's Turkish. Turkish? Well, Turkish-ish. Came out of the refuse in Syria. They got a lab. It's called Gezi. If you're interested, I can send you stuff about it. Was she hitting on him? 8 years ago, getting some of your contact details was an invitation. Maybe they swung into a time of more promiscuous namespace management and less promiscuous socio-sexual norms. Hubert, etc. wished he'd skinned the précis of the current sociology of 20-year-olds. He rubbed the interface strip on his ring finger and muttered contact details, held out his hand. Her hand was warm, rough, and small. She touched the strip she wore as a choker and whispered, and he felt a confirming buzz from the system, then a double buzz that meant she'd reciprocated. So you can whitelist me. Hubert, etc. wondered if she was so used to sharing contacts, if she was used to sharing contacts so widely that she had to worry about spam or... You've never been to one of these, she said. Her face was right up to his ear again. No, he shouted. Her hair smelled like burning tires and licorice. You'll love this. Come on, let's get in close. They're going to start soon. She took his hand again, and her calluses rasped over his skin, and he felt another buzz. It was endogenous and hadn't originated with his interface stuff. They skirted the dancers, kicking through leaves and puffs of dust that swirled in the lights. There were glittering motes in the dust that made the air seem laden with fairy glitter. Hubert, etc. caught sight of Seth. Seth looked back and clocked the scene. The girl, the hands, the scramble through dark spaces for a private vantage, and his face creased with passing envy before turning into a fratty leer, to which he added a thumbs up. The automated music thudded, canto pop and Roomba that Rule 34 tumbled out of its directed random walk through music space. Here's good, she said, as they yanked themselves onto a catwalk. The gritty service ladder left rust streaks on Hubert, etc.'s palms. Out of the music's blast, they could hear each other. Hubert, etc. was aware of his breath and pulse. Keep your eye on that, she pointed to a machine to one side. Hubert, etc. squinted and saw her friends from before moving among them. They did furniture, mostly shelving. There was a ton of feedstock in the storeroom. Did you help put this? A sweep of his arm to take in the factory, the dancers. Together? She laid one finger alongside her rubber nose, winked slowly. Supreme Soviet, she said. She tapped the temple of her glasses, and he caught a shimmer as their magnification kicked in, with false color and stabilization. They got it! The music cut off mid-note. A rumble in the bones of the factory vibrated the catwalk. The dancers looked around for its source, then a wave of attention propagated through them as gaze followed gaze, and they focused on the machine, which moved, dust shaking down, dance lights skewering it, lighting more motes. A new smell now, woodsy, full of dangerous volatiles that boiled off the machine's elements as they glowed to life. The hush in the room broke when the first composite plank dropped onto the assembly bed, nudged by thousands of infinitesimal fingers that corrected its alignment, just as the next plank dropped. Now they fell at regular intervals, a ladder of thin, strong, supple, cellulosic boards, swiftly joined by cross pieces, also swept into position, lining up the prefabricated joinery elements that clicked together with a sniff. The fingers lifted the grid, moved it down the line, and a new grid was assembled just as quickly, and then they mated and clicked together. More of them, and then a loop of fastening fabric thrown, caught, and cinched around the framework, and the completed piece was tossed to one side. Another was a minute behind it on the line. A dancer sauntered over to the output file and lifted the finished piece easily, brought it one-handed into the dance floor, sliced through the fastening with a knife that gleamed in the dance lights. The bed, that's what it was, click-clacked into place, yawning back, ready for a mattress. The dancer climbed up onto the bed's grid of slats and started jumping up and down. It was as springy as a trampoline, and in a moment she was doing mid-air splits, butt drops, even a somersault. The girl sat back and ran a finger around her beard. Good stuff, Hubert etc. was sure she was smiling. That's a cool bed frame, Hubert etc. said, for lack of something better to say. One of the best, she said. They had a ton of profitable lines, but bed frames were the best. Big with hotels because they're practically indestructible and they're feather light. Why aren't they making them anymore? Oh, they are. Mucci shut down the plant and moved to Alberta 6 months ago. Got a huge subsidy to relocate. Ontario couldn't match the deal. They'd only been here for a couple of years. Only employed 20 people all told. Their two-year tax holiday was ending. Place has been empty since then. We can do the whole line from here. All Mucci's furniture, including the white label stuff they do for Nestle and Standards & Poor's and Roy and Chandon, chairs, tables, bookcases, shelving. There's an empty feedstock plant in Orangeville we're hitting for the next party, raw material for the supply chain. If we don't get caught, we can do enough furnishings for a couple thousand families. You don't charge them or anything? A long look. Communist Party, you remember? Yeah, but how do you eat and stuff? She shrugged. Here and there, this and that, kindness of strangers. So people bring you food and you give them this stuff? No, she said, we don't do barter. This is gifts, the gift economy. Everything freely given, nothing sought in return. Now it's Hubert Etcetra's turn. So how often do you get a gift around the same time as you're giving one of these away? Who doesn't show up with something to leave behind when they take something? Of course. It's hard to get people out of the scarcity quid pro quo habit, but we know they don't have to bring anything. Did you bring anything tonight? He patted his pockets. A couple of $1 million, nothing much. Keep it. Money is the one thing we don't take. Like my mom always said, money is the crappiest present. Anyone trying to get or give money here, we sling them out on their butts, no second chances. Keep my wallet in my pants. Good idea. She was kind enough not to notice the double entendre that made Hubert etc. blush. I'm Frank Scarella, by the way. And I thought my parents were screwed up. The beard wiggled inscrutably. My parents didn't give me that one, she said. It's my party name. Like Trotsky, he said. He was Lev Davidovich. I did an independent history unit on Bolshevism in the 11th grade. This is much more interesting. They say old Carl had the right diagnosis and the wrong prescription. She shrugged. Putting the party back in the Communist Party makes a difference. Jury's still out, though. We'll probably implode. You guys did, right? The Zeppelins? Zeppelins explode, he said. Hardly hard. Sorry. He stuck his legs out and rested against a guardrail that creaked, then held. He realized he could have gone over and fallen 10 meters to the concrete floor. But yeah, the Zeps didn't work out. It made perfect sense on paper. All these time-rich, cash-poor people with friends all over the world, Zeps were cheap as hell to run if you didn't care where or how fast you ran. There have been hundreds of startups talking big about climate-appropriate transport and the new age of aviation. Despite all that, there was the inescapable sense of a gold rush, a game of musical chairs that would end with just a few lucky souls sitting on enough money to stop pretend giving a shit about any kind of aviation except for the kind that came with champagne and a warm eye mask after takeoff. A lot of money sloshed around, a lot of talk from governments about nurturing global talent and new industrial reality. The talk came with huge R&D tax credits and investment money. 3 years into it, during which Hubert etc. and everyone he knew gave up everything to scramble to put huge floating cigars into the sky, the thing had imploded. Just a few years on, it was retro chic. Hubert etc. had seen a genuine Mark II Zeppelin comfort suite in a clip on super fashionable decor. A painstakingly restored set of flying dormitory furniture had been refitted for 2 rich stationary people, not dozens of itinerant flying hobos. Hubert, etc. once spent 3 months in a co-op that was building those prefab suites, ready to slot to any airship platform. His sweat equity was supposed to entitle him to a certain amount of time every year in the sky, on board any ship carrying a co-op unit, bumbling through the world's prevailing winds to wherever. It wasn't your fault. It's the nature of the beast to believe in bubbles and think that you can just entrepreneur your way out. She unclipped her beard and her glasses. She had a fox face, grooved where the heavy glasses had rested, sheened with sweat. She wiped the sweat with her shirt tail, giving him a glimpse of her pale stomach, a mole by her navel. And your people here? He wished for more beer, realized he needed a piss, wondering if he should hold it in to make more later. We're not going to entrepreneur our way out of anything. This isn't entrepreneurship. Anti-entrepreneurship's been tried too. Slacking doesn't get you anywhere. We're not anti-entrepreneur either. We're not entrepreneurial the way that baseball is at tic-tac-toe. We're playing a different game. What's that? Post-scarcity with mere religious solemnity. He didn't succeed at keeping his face still because she looked pissed off. Sorry. Hubert, etc. was one of nature's apologizers. A housemate once made a set of cardboard tombstones for Halloween, hung like bunting across the kitchen cabinets. Hubert, etc. had read, sorry. Don't sorry me. Look, etc. Look at all of this. On paper, this place is useless. The stuff coming off that line has to be destroyed. It's a trademark violation, even though it came off an official Muji line using Muji's feedstock. It doesn't have Muji's license. So that configuration of cellulose and glue is a crime. That's so manifestly fucked up and shit that anyone who pays attention to it is playing the wrong game and does not deserve our consideration. Anyone who says that the world is a better place with this building left to rot, I don't think that's the argument, Hubert, etc. said. He once had this kind of discussion a lot. He wasn't young and avant-garde, but he understood this. It's that telling people what they can do with their stuff produces worse outcomes than letting them do stupid things and letting the market sort of the good ideas from. You think anyone believes that anymore? You know why the people who need furniture don't just break down the doors of this place? It's not market orthodoxy. Of course not. It's fear. They're right to be afraid. This world, if you aren't a success, you're a failure. If you're not on top, you're on the bottom. If you're in between, you're hanging on by your fingernails, hoping you can get a better grip before your strength gives out. Everyone holding on is too scared to let go. Everyone on the bottom is too worn down to try. The people on top, they're the ones who depend on things staying the way they are. So what do you call your philosophy then? Post-fear? She shrugged. Don't care. Lots of names for it. None of that matters. That's what I care about. She pointed to the dancers and the beds. Another line of machines was online and folding table and chair sets were piling up. What about communists? What about it? That's a label with a lot of history. You could be communist. She waved her beard at him. Communist Party. That doesn't make us communists any more than throwing a birthday party makes you a birthdayist. Communism is an interesting thing to do, but not anything I ever want to be. The ladder clanged and the catwalk vibrated like a tuning fork. They looked over the edge just as Seth's head came into view. Hello, lovebirds, he said. He was sloppy and jittery, high on something interesting. Hubert, etc. grabbed him before he could reel over the guardrail. Another person popped over the edge, one of the bearded threesome that had been by the beer. Hey! He seemed stoned too, but it was hard for Hubert, etc. to tell. This is the guy, Seth said, the guy with the names. You're etc., the new guy said, arms wide, like he was greeting a lost brother. I'm Billiam. He gave Hubert, etc. a lingering drunkard's embrace. Hubert, etc. had dated guys, was open to the idea, but Billiam, beautiful tilted eyes aside, was not his type and too high to consider in any event. Hubert, etc. firmly peeled him off, and the girl helped. Billiam, she said, what have you two been up to? Billiam and Seth locked eyes and dissolved into hysterical giggles. She gave Billiam a playful shove that sent him sprawling, one foot dangling over the catwalk. Meta, she said, or something like it. You've heard of meta. It gave you ironic distance. It was a very narrow kind of high. Conspiracy people thought it was too zeitgeisty to be a coincidence, claimed it was spread to soften the population for its miserable lot. In his day, 8 years before, the scourge had been called now. something they gave to source code auditors and drone pilots to give them robotic focus. He'd eaten a shit ton of it while working on the Zeps. It made him feel like a happy android. The conspiracy people had said the same thing about Now that they said about Meta. End of the day, anything that made you discount objective reality and assign a premium to some kind of internal mental state was going to be both pro-survival and pro-status quo. "What's your name?" Hubert, etc. said. "Does it matter?" she said. "It's driving me nuts," he admitted. "You've got it in your address book," she said. He rolled his eyes. Of course he did. He rubbed his interface patch and fingered it for a moment. "Eve Redwater," he said, "as in the Redwaters?" "There are a lot of Redwaters," she said. "We're some of them. Not the ones you're thinking of, though." "Close to them," Billiam said from his stone-prone, ironic world. "Cousins?" "Cousins," she said. Hubert, etc. tried hard not to let phrases like trustafarian and bohemian cross his mind. He probably failed. She didn't look happy about having her name out there. "Cousins as in poor country relations," Seth said from his fetal position, "or cousins as in we only get to use the small airplane?" Hubert, etc. felt bad, and not just because he was crushing on her. He'd known people born to privilege, plenty in the Zep scene, and they could be nice people whose salient facts extended beyond unearned privilege. Seth wouldn't normally have been a dick about this kind of thing. This was precisely the kind of thing that Seth was not normally a dick about when he was high. "Cousins as in enough to worry about kidnapping, but not enough to pay the ransom," she said, with the air of someone repeating a time-worn phrase. The arrival of the two stone boys had sucked the magic out of the night. Below, the machines found a steady rhythm, and Rule 34 spun again, blending Witch House and New Romantic, automatically syncing with the machine's beat. It wasn't pulling a lot of dancers, but a few diehards were out, being beautiful and in motion. Hubert, etc. stared at them. Three things happened. The music changed, psychobilly and dubstep. He opened his mouth to say something, and Billiam said, in a tittering sing-song, "Busted!" and pointed at the ceiling. They followed his finger and saw the flock of drones detach from the ceiling, fold back their wings, and plunge into a screaming drop. Eve pulled her beard back on, and Billiam made sure his was on too. "Seth, masks!" Hubert, etc. shook his friend. There had been good reason for Seth to carry both of their masks, but he couldn't remember what it was. Seth sat up with his eyebrows raised and a smirk on his face. Tucking chin to chest, Hubert, etc. swarmed over Seth, roughly turned out his pockets. He slapped his mask to his face and felt the fabric adhere in bunches and whorls as his breath teased it out and the oils of his skin were wicked through its weave. He did Seth. "You don't need to do this," Seth said. "Right," Hubert, etc. said. "It's out of the goodness of my heart. You're worried they'll walk my social graph and find you in a one-hop high-intensity zone." Seth's smile, glowing in the darkness of his face, was infuriatingly calm. It vanished behind the mask. That was the stupid Meta. "You'd be screwed then. They'd run your data going back years, dude, until they found something. They always find something. They put the screws to you, threaten you with every horrible unless you turn narc. Room 101 all the way, baby." Hubert, etc. gave Seth a harder than necessary slap upside the head. Seth said, "Ow," mildly, stopped talking. The drones flew a coverage pattern like pigeons on crank. Hubert, etc.'s interface surfaces shivered as they detected intended incursions and shut down. Hubert, etc. downloaded countermeasures regularly, if only to fight off drive-by identity thief creeps, but he shivered back, wondering if he was more up-to-date than the cop bots. The party broke up. Dancers fled, some holding furniture. The music leapt to offensive capability volume, a sound so loud it made your eyes hurt. Hubert, etc. clapped his hands over his ears just as one of the drones clipped an I-beam and spun out, smashing to the ground. A drone dived on the sound system's control unit, knocked it down. The sound went on. Hubert, etc. pulled Seth to sit, pointed at the ladder. They let go of their ears to climb down. It was torture, the brutal sound, the painful vibrations in the metal under their hands and feet. Eve came down and pointed at the doorway. Something heavy and painful clipped Hubert in the head and shoulder, knocking him to his knees. He got to all fours, then to his feet, seeing stars behind the mask. He looked for whatever had hit him. It took him a second to make sense of what he saw. Billy lay on the floor, limbs in a strange swastika, head visibly misshapen, an inky pool of blood spread about it in the dimness. Fighting dizziness and pain from the sound, he bent over Billiam and gingerly peeled back the beard. It was saturated with blood. Billiam's face was smashed into a parody of features. His forehead had an ugly dent encompassing one eye. Hubert, etc., tried for a pulse at Billiam's wrist and then at his throat, but all he felt was the thunder of the music. He put his hand on Billiam's chest to feel for the rise and fall of breath, but couldn't tell. He looked up, but Seth and Eve had already reached the door. They must not have seen Billiam fall, must not have seen him crash into Hubert, etc. A drone ruffled Hubert, etc.'s hair. Hubert, etc. wanted to cry. He pushed the feeling down, remembering first aid. He shouldn't move Billiam, but if he stayed, he'd be nabbed. It might be too late. The part of his brain in charge of cowardly self-justification chattered. Why not just go? It's not like he could do anything. He might even be dead. He looks dead. Hubert, etc., had made a concerted study of that voice and concluded that it was a colossal asshole. He tried to think past the self-serving rationalizations. He grabbed a bag someone left behind and, working gently, rolled Billiam into recovery position with the bag under his head. He was propping Billiam up with a broken chair and a length of pipe, eyes squinted, head hammering, when someone grabbed him by a sore shoulder. He almost vomited. This was the day he'd known was coming all his life, when he ended up in prison. But it wasn't a cop. It was Eve. She said something inaudible over the music. He pointed at Billiam. She knelt down and made a light. She threw up, having the presence of mind to do so in her purse. Hubert, etc., noted distantly that she was thinking of esophageal cells and DNA. That distant part of him admired her foresight. She got to her feet, grabbed him again by his bad arm, yanked hard. He screamed in pain. The sound was lost in a roar, and he went, leaving Billiam behind. Thank you.